It's April the 9th, 2022. Today I want to kind of go into kind of the side effect of the current situation, particularly Ukraine and so forth, not about the conflict itself, but about the sanctions that the Western world, particularly the NATO countries and a few other friends, have placed upon the Russians and the consequences that that's going to have and the effectiveness of this idea. Okay, so essentially, with the exception of energy products, particularly natural gas and oil to European countries, basically that we put on sanctions which prevents them trading in dollars, I guess, for almost anything else you can think of from Russia. And for instance, the U.S. itself has actually banned the importation of Russian oil. And of course, the way we've handled this situation here has been to basically start drawing down our strategic petroleum reserve to sort of buffer for the lack of the Russian oil that we were buying. And remember, the only reason why we were buying Russian oil was basically because of the Biden policies, which basically kind of slowed up the regeneration of the production at the level we had during the previous administration under President Trump. So in other words, this is sort of a self-induced problem to begin with, even having a dependence on that. Our policies with respect to Iran have alienated the Arab Gulf states, and we also have an embargo on the Iranian oil. So you begin to start seeing how that we're cutting off our own supplies from overseas while actually holding down our own domestic production. At the same time, creating these worldwide high oil and gas prices. Okay, so that's kind of so a lot of this is our own creation, our own reaction to this. The theory being that somehow this is going to bring down the Putin regime and free the people of Ukraine, I guess, and do great good things. However, I tend to make an argument that this probably won't happen, which I'll follow up with here. Also, at the end, I do want to make another comment on the situation in Ukraine, which I'll try to put that at the end of this video. But if you like these videos, please subscribe. Give me a like if you like it. It helps out with the algorithm a lot, and comments are appreciated. And so anyway, so basic theory I have is the following: that fundamentally, other than minor changes, which are probably on the increased side rather than the decreased side of things, the demand for fuels, oil, natural gas, are pretty much where they were before February the 24th, for example. I don't think they're likely to change in a reduced dimension very much in the next year or so or more. And similarly, the production isn't likely to increase very much either. So in so much as you attempt to punish Russia by these sanctions, essentially you're going to do either drive the prices much higher, or all you're going to do is just redistribute who gets what oil. Like this oil is tainted, or it has some negative connotation to it. In other words, if we won't buy oil from, say, Russia, then perhaps India will buy oil from Russia, and we'll have to go in and bid up the price of some other oil in order to get it. And the same is true, much more so for Europe, where the U.S. is relatively close to self-sufficient, in the sense that, if we were to put on like wartime rationing in this country, I'm sure we would be self-sufficient at current production levels. And gee, I shouldn't have said those words. If Biden hears it, he'll probably go for it, right? No, we don't want that. I know, I don't want that. But I'm saying, what I'm getting at is we're not in a truly crisis mode. In fact, we're currently able to draw down our strategic petroleum reserves to keep the prices up. Actually, they got them down, I think, 8 cents a gallon on gasoline national average last week or something like that. But of course, this is a rather foolish thing to do. The strategic petroleum reserves are there for something like a war where there really is a disruption of oil, I mean, and because of, a war where maybe submarines are sinking tankers, creating great ecological disasters and things of that sort. Can you imagine how big that would be? I mean, seriously. I mean, in World War II, you had little bitty tankers compared to the ones we have today. well, I don't want to get into that topic too much, but you get where that would go, I think. But the point is that that was what that's for. It's being misused for political purposes because the whole idea of this release is going to continue only into the midterm election. No solution, and as far as I know, no real increase in production. In fact, doing this actually holds down new production because, well, what brings up new production is when the prices go up, people want to capture those potential profits, oil companies, and in doing so, then they all compete with each other and bring down the price. That's the whole idea of a free market. But I guess our neo-Marxist people that are advising Biden don't tell him that, huh? Anyhow, so my point, though, is I don't know that this is really going to ultimately really do that much detriment to Putin's regime, because he'll simply be selling his oil to other poorer countries, probably at a bit of a discount to the current price, but still above what it was, say, a year ago. He'll be getting plenty of money out of it in one way or another. And we will be forcing, as I've been saying all along, Russia and China into a closer relationship, which is not what we should be wanting to do. We should actually be wanting to split them apart, not bring them together. That's kind of the net effect of this kind of crazy strategy. As it is right now, it looks like the ruble has actually recovered to pre-war levels. They are trying to pressure Europe to buy the oil in rubles, which means they'd have to exchange their euros for rubles and increasing the market price of the ruble. So, so far the Europeans have held back. I've heard something about that they're about to ban importing coal, and I'm wondering where they're going to get that from. And the answer is probably us, I guess. So that may be positive for the West Virginia team. That's certainly one of the possibilities. Which I guess that part might be good, might help our balance of payments a little bit. I don't know, again, how quickly we can ramp up coal production over what it was. Maybe it was declining anyhow, and so we can keep it at current level and market it. Again, that's not an area I'm really going to get into, but in general, I just don't think there's that much more that's going to be developed in the short term by these policies. In the long term, as I've said all along, if you go back to all of my Ukrainian war-related videos, I believe that Putin has made a strategic blunder in going into there, and it has to do as much with the war, not so much with the war, but it has to do with the long-term consequences. And he was increasingly getting Europe dependent on his energy resources, which was bringing money into his country, and they were foolishly making himself that dependent on Russia, which was a threat to them, but they didn't seem to see that. And now, when you look at the situation, in the long term, they will be trying to look for alternative sources of energy. And that doesn't bode well for Russia. But at the same time, you have to say that he's managed to keep his income flow coming in while this war continues. So I think that what probably transpires as we go forward in this situation is that we could probably expect the Russians to probably, start nationalizing a lot of the businesses that have been left behind and still reopen them without, they'll have their McDonald's without paying the royalties to McDonald's and so forth. And this idea of forcing Russia into artificial bankruptcy really, in the long run, just hurts the creditors over here more than it hurts Russia, because everybody knows it wasn't because they couldn't pay, it was because we wouldn't let them. So, I mean, I think that's kind of made the point there. So, but we'll see how that all turns out. That's not to say that there's anything good about what Putin's doing in Ukraine, of course. And like I said, I will mention a comment that yesterday there was a missile attack. I think it looks like a cruise missile, I think it was, on a train station in Ukraine, and an interesting line that they put in Russian for the children on the body of the cruise missile, which was still intact after the explosion. What more can you say about that? Any would-be apologist is kind of like sitting in for them, it's kind of, it tends to make you believe that attack on that shelter in Mariupol sometime back, where they had children there, was deliberate. Because, I mean, it occurred to me at the time it was just possible that a plane flying at a certain altitude could drop a bomb and not read anything like that because of the speed. But I'm beginning to think they're deliberately doing stuff like this and probably scoped it out with a drone ahead of time. So this war crime thing that they're committing is an ongoing problem that's going to fester. They've been suspended from the Human Rights Council and they resigned apparently right at the same time. I think we did the same thing in 2018 over the immigration policies of the Trump administration, which is hard to compare the two, actually, deliberately attacking civilians versus just trying to maintain your own border security. But at any rate, that's another big black mark on their behavior. And this Baluchal massacre, like I mentioned in my video, I guess the one a week ago, about the purposes of some of these mercenaries that they have in there. What I've read about the story is that basically the thing started off with some shootings of people who the Russian troops felt were spotters for Ukrainian artillery. And basically, these people were in there and were continuing to be under attack, and they believe the local population was helping the Ukrainian army out. And then they brought in some of these people, I think, from the mercenary group. I think it was the Wagner group, and that's the group that then started doing things like where people were found, tortured and hands tied behind their back and shot in the back of the head and all that. I believe that was done mostly with this Wagner group, bunch of mercenaries. But of course, they were authorized and brought in by Putin and his own enforcers, so he's continuing to create this. But the point is, everybody can talk about this as a war crime, but unless his regime falls, probably this won't really affect him much at all, and it probably tends to build up his reputation as a very scary individual. So at any rate, and of course that may make his nuclear threats a little more credible, and that it doesn't seem to have a moral compass guiding his activities. As we would say. Well, at any rate, I'll wrap this up for now. By the way, the links to the addresses, excuse me, I always say links, the address of my social media accounts on the four major ones, Twitter, Parler, Gettr, and Gab are below. And also, I've tried to sign up for this new Trump Truth Social, but so far I'm on hold there still. So at any rate, until next time,